I am Arthur Kolker, founder and CEO of StayFi. StayFi started in around 2019 to help short-term rental operators build their own brand and become less dependent on OTAs like Airbnb and Vrbo. So we have a bunch of tools that can help operators collect emails, do effective email marketing, text marketing, and other ways to kind of put your brand in front of guests and make sure that every single guest knows who you are, why book direct is better than booking through an OTA, and help you make sure that anytime those guests want to come back, they're booking with you directly. So with that, I will share my screen. I'll just walk through this presentation that covers kind of the basics of StayFi, email marketing, and just some other general tips of how you can take your direct marketing to the next level. Awesome. Today, just a little more background. We're used in over 20,000 properties around the world, and I'll explain what exactly that means. And we'll go through some case studies of, how different short-term rental operators have leveraged StayFi to drive direct bookings and substantially decrease their dependence on OTAs. Some of the top reasons why folks come to us is because they see a risk in being dependent on third-party channels for all or a vast majority of their bookings. So, as these third-party channels charge fees. Anywhere between 15 and 18% is the average. Maybe they're split between the guest and yourself, but that's pretty much the total take rate. So some of the advantages of building your own audience to market to is not only can you obviously save on OTA fees when you're getting a direct booking instead of a Airbnb, Vrbo, or booking facilitated booking. The other really big power, and I think even bigger opportunity than just kind of switching what would have been an OTA booking into a direct booking, is also helping drive overall occupancy higher by marketing intelligently to your list of happy, satisfied guests that have stayed with you before. And we'll also cover some ways that you can do that as well. Because obviously getting a marginal new booking that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise is even more valuable than getting just a booking that would have come through an OTA replaced by a direct booking. So just to give you an idea of kind of what StayFi does at a high level, kind of like four main areas that we work in. The first is we help you collect data on all your guests, not just the booker. The primary way we do this is through the Wi-Fi. So if you've ever stayed at a hotel, used Wi-Fi at an airport or a coffee shop, you probably have seen something called a captive portal. So when you log into the Wi-Fi, you saw this screen or page pop up on your phone or laptop where you had to enter in your information. StayFi provides that same technology, and we're the only company that does this for short-term rentals. So you can imagine you have a group of 10 people staying with you. All 10 people join the Wi-Fi network in the property. They'll all see this page, which will have your custom branding on it. And that way, every single person will have to enter their information to get onto the Wi-Fi. And of course, we also can set up custom, terms and conditions that they have to accept. We can collect other fields outside of just email, like phone number or birth date. We can screen out children. We use a third-party tool to verify that emails are real. So that way, every single email you're collecting in the property is a real email. So you can communicate not just with the booker, but everybody staying in that home. So you can collect, 5, 10, 15 emails per stay. Outside of that, we also connect to your property management software, whether it be Hostaway, Guesty, Hospitable, etc. And we'll actually go through every booking you've ever had in the past, and any booking that has a real email, we'll also pull that email into our email marketing tool. So that way we're not just collecting data from your Wi-Fi, we're also pulling in any other data you've collected in your PMS, which can really supplement or kickstart your list, especially if you've never done email marketing before. And we do this for all future bookings as well. So we're basically pulling in all relevant data into one place. And then we can also collect data on websites and other ways too, which I'll touch upon. In StayFi, we have our own email and text marketing tools built for short-term rentals with a ton of templates that I'll show you and different recommended campaigns. But we also connect with third-party tools. So if you're already happily, let's say, doing email marketing and MailChimp. We can also connect to MailChimp and send all the data we collect there. There are also some Wi-Fi related tools within StayFi, things like outage alerting, occupancy alerting. So with a PMS connection, we can even tell you if there's more guests than are booked in a property at any time. So there's some other advantages outside of just the marketing piece, which not so much what I'm going to talk about today, but those are also there. And we have some upselling tools within StayFi as well. So you can sell tours and activities, sell stay extensions, engage guests in more ways to drive incremental revenues. But most today, I'll just be focused on email. And then finally, at the end of the day, we're going to make sure every single guest, whether they booked on an OTA or booked directly, they and everyone else there knows who you are and knows why they should come back and book directly. I always tell people if they have organic experience or they see guests book your listings multiple times through an OTA, that's like a prime sign that StayFi is going to provide a lot of value for you. Because if you have somebody coming back and booking you 2-3 times on Vrbo, you should only pay Vrbo once to acquire that guest and all their friends and family staying with them. And then every other time they want to come back, you should be getting them directly. And that list will just grow over time. So you can not only convert more bookings to direct, but you can actually drive bookings that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Here are just a few case studies where we jump into the meat of the content. And this really just shows that we have customers of every single size that have had success with StayFi. From one listing, like in the bottom left, I can't pronounce it. It's actually this listing in the Czech Republic with a very long and complex Slavic name. But they, now after using StayFi for a few years, they're at 80% book direct. They have a very unique, interesting property. It's like a medieval mill. They converted into a short-term rental. And people love staying there so much and refer it to their friends and family that pretty much everyone who stays there, they send them emails, they get a ton of engagement. So obviously, if you have interesting properties or something unique or unusual, your ability to promote it directly is even further enhanced just because your content is interesting and you can engage people on social media. But then I also have examples here of like Anchor Premier Vacations. They have 20 listings that they manage in Michigan. And over time, they started their business, I think just last year. And they went from, 10 to 30% of all their bookings coming direct just in a year. And that just includes also driving, bookings they think, would not have happened otherwise in their shoulder season because, they're a very like summer driven destination where they're totally booked, June, July, August, September. But then, they want to start getting bookings in May, April, October, November, and having their own proprietary lists of guests that stay with them before is a way to really push those shoulder months where they typically see a lot more weakness on the OTAs. So just given your positioning, who your guests are, where your destination is, that can really dictate kind of like where we're going to find the most value with email and text marketing. But obviously, pushing times of the year that are a little weaker on third-party channels, is a great way and probably the top way people see success because they're able to advertise their destination to happy guests that, maybe they want to come and experience, Michigan in the fall. They just hadn't occurred to them. And obviously it's also a lot cheaper than booking in the summer months. So there's kind of 4 places. Obviously, the first thing you have to do to be effective with email is collect data, right? So without data, the more data you have, the more value email becomes. And I think it's one of the interesting things, right? It can take you an hour to build a great newsletter, but the ROI of that newsletter is going to be 10x more when your list is 10 times bigger. So kind of like the discrete time chunks it takes to do email stays the same, but your list value will just compound over time. So the more places you can source data, the better. Obviously, number one, and the first thing you can start with right off the bat, which you probably already have some, is the data in your property management software. Different PMS are better than others at trying to get at that booker email. Unfortunately, some don't really have an automation built in that like tries to uncover who the booker's real email is. So if all your bookings, let's say, have been on Airbnb, you're not going to have that much reservation data in your PMS. Some I know have a few automations that help uncover at least the booker's email. And so you may have more data. So when you create a StayFi account, you can connect your PMS and we can automatically import that data, and you'll see, we'll clean out all the fake proxy emails, and you'll see how many emails you have to start with. And that can be a great way just to seed your list with data. And you can also upload data from other sources. So if you've collected emails through, let's say, a Hostfully guidebook or some other way, you can also upload those lists into StayFi and see kind of where you start with your data. Or maybe you have a friends and family list. That can also be a great way of like, oh, I know these 20 people have stayed with us before. Let me just also include them in our newsletter. Or your owners as well can be another thing to upload if you're a property manager. And that's kind of a great way to start. And StayFi's email tool is also free, up to 200 contacts. So you can create it, if you have 150 contacts, you can get starting to send emails, and you don't have to worry about paying for the software until your list is of a certain size or over 200 contacts. Then obviously the main way that we help you collect data outside of the PMS is through the Wi-Fi. And that's just going to really accelerate your list data collection. I know that's, for instance, why James, decided to start using StayFi, is because he had been collecting some data through Hostfully guidebooks. And then he said, hey, I'm still missing out on 8 other people in this rental. So why don't you use StayFi to get all this other data? And we know from experience, right? We see so much data that repeat guests, over half of them are usually the non-booking guest. So, friends, family, your two couples, the wife and the husband are together, and, maybe one booked it, but the other is more of the trip decision maker. There's just so many different examples where the non-primary booking guest is the decision maker or could be a decision maker for a future booking. And if you're collecting 8 times more emails per stay, for instance, you're going to build that list a lot faster. Through our email tool, we can also help you put a sign up form on your website. And this is another great thing, especially if you have a decent amount of direct traffic to your website. Every time someone goes there, right, collecting, 10% of them, 5% of them, you collect their email, it's going to help grow your list faster. We can do pop-ups, we can do forms, we can do give gets. So you can have like a pop-up that's like get 10% off your next booking when you put your email in, and then it automatically sends in that coupon code. So there's lots of strategies you can use to collect emails on your website. And because these are really easy code snippets, like the pop-up, you just add it to the header of the website. Any PMS website, if you use like Hospitable's native website or Hostaway's or Hostfully's or pretty much any of them, you can add this code to add these types of pop-ups to those websites. And then finally, social media is another one where we see people drive to get emails. Typically, it's because they're posting content and people are going to the website and then they are subscribing there. Or sometimes people are like, I see, especially smaller operators post, to their audience, like, hey, we had a cancellation, like, put your email in this forum if you want us to reach out to you. So just depending on kind of how much effort you're putting to social media, it can be another way to drive email data collection and engage with guests around specific availability. Like I just saw one of our properties posted, one Coachella weekend left in Palm Springs of their 5 properties, right? And they're definitely going to get someone to book that ASAP. So you can leverage that to kind of really emphasize particular events or availability in your area or with your listings. Here's just a little idea of kind of what does the guest experience look like when you use StayFi, because there are these other opportunities to brand to your guests. So with StayFi, someone joins the Wi-Fi, they select the network, they'll see obviously this captive portal where you collect this data will have your branding on it. So especially with like an Airbnb booking, they're not going to know what your brand is. They'll probably just think I'm staying in an Airbnb. And it's going to take a few touch points to really emphasize to the guests that like this isn't a quote unquote Airbnb, this is a X brand property. And it's going to take a few times to really nail that differentiation to the guest head, just because a lot of people think of Airbnb like Kleenex, right? It's like a generic word. Even people that book on Vrbo say they're staying in Airbnb, right? So it's just driving that differentiation that you're your own brand, and the hopefully great experience they're having is because of you, not because of Airbnb. That's the key thing, right? When the guest enters their information, we have this product in StayFi called Homepage, where you can basically just have a collection of links that your guests can select from and go to with different resources. This page is kind of like a link tree for your listing, if you've ever seen that product. And this page is also available outside of the Wi-Fi flow. So a lot of people will also send guests this page other ways because they'll have things like a link to their guidebook, like a Hostfully guidebook, a link to book that property again, that's super useful because from our data, we also know that most repeat bookings are the same property. Even when you have like a portfolio of 10 homes, a lot of behavior is I want to book this home again. And then you can't see the buttons here, but we have partnerships with two companies, one called the Hostco and one called Viator, which help you do upsells. The Hostco lets you sell things like stay alterations, early check-in, late checkout, mid-stay cleans, pool heatings, extra guest fees, pet fees, as well as like services that you can offer from partners like uh, in-home massage, yoga class. So they have a bunch of other third-party partners too, where you make a commission if any of those products are sold, and obviously you make the vast majority of the funds if you sell a stay alteration. So that you can have a button here that says like book late checkout, and it costs like $50, and they can do it through the Hostco, and that's a great way to kind of get that incremental revenue per stay. And then we also have a partnership with Viator where you'll earn 8% on any tours and activities booked. So that's another cool way where you can recommend kind of fun things in the area. Viator is the largest tours and activity marketplace owned by TripAdvisor. And you can make an easy 8% on any tours and activities book there for things that maybe your guests were thinking of doing anyways, where you're just making incremental revenue on top of the booking. And then finally, this is what we're going to dive into more, is we have all the tools you need to do text and email marketing post stay. I like to differentiate between the PMS messaging, like hospitable messaging, versus the type of email and text marketing we do, right? The PMS is really meant for transactional messaging with the booker about this specific booking that takes place before, during, and maybe for a very short period after the booking to like drive a review, let's say back to Airbnb. After that, the PMS is not going to provide a lot of functionality around continuous marketing to the guests, right? And especially marketing to the non-booking guests, because that's, the majority of the data we're going to collect. So I like to tell people transactional messaging, that's for the PMS to do, post-stay marketing, and some during the stay marketing I'll talk about. That's really where StayFi can help. And we're going to like fill in the gap of like what you would think like a MailChimp or Campaign Monitor would be doing when it comes to doing all the post-stay email marketing, whether it's automated or one time. And I'll talk about both of those types of options. I think it's just important before you embark on email marketing or website. I think, website is definitely number one. So if you don't have a website yet, I definitely look at the tools within your PMS, whether you use Hospitable, Lodgify, Hostfully, Hostaway. They all have a direct booking website, admittedly of varying quality, with other add-on tools included or not, right? So a lot of folks will start with that product. At a certain point, they may move to like a third-party website, like from a company like Boostly or IC&D or Realtek, where it's like a more sophisticated, fully fleshed out website with all the pages. But typically the PMS websites are a great place to get started because most of the traffic you're going to be driving is from your existing guests. Using SEO or like Google to drive new incremental traffic takes a lot more time, and you have to be of a certain size for that to work. So these websites typically work very well for kind of repeat guests that just want to book you again. So what do I want to accomplish? Obviously, getting people to rebook is like number one. So returning guests. New guests can be a little trickier because you're thinking like, hey, I'm just marketing to people that have stayed with me, or maybe people that visited my website. We see a lot of people have success with referrals. So that's one thing to consider as, hey, I'm going to market to Joe, but maybe I should let them know like, hey, we can share a discount with anybody else that might want to come and book with us, right? So there are ways to leverage these channels to drive traffic to who your guests know, or maybe who they're posting to on their social media account. And then you have to think about like, do I have availability for people to book, right? So if you are 100% booked all year, maybe you don't think email marketing has value because it's like I already have every single thing booked, and getting one incremental direct booking is going to help me a lot. I'd say if you're fully booked, then maybe you should look at your pricing, right? So you're probably not charging enough money. But I would think strategically around like, am I a seasonal destination? How can I use this marketing to really boost my non-peak seasons? Also, another big area we see a lot of success with is like, how do you approach cancellation? And if you do see occasional cancellations that are hard to refill, that can be another area where text and email can be very effective. For instance, like let's say Coachella was in a month and somebody canceled like right before your cancellation window ended. Now you can just quickly go out to your audience and say like, hey, we have this availability. Before, what a lot of people do is just like cut the rate on OTAs as that date approaches very soon. You can use this audience to try to leverage those cancellations and get bookings at that same higher price, hopefully, than maybe what you would have done to drive it through an OTA. So those are all ways that you can use this type of marketing. It's just important you kind of have a sense of where does your calendar have availability, what times of years, or there are certain like instances that you really want to focus in on to fill or increase your overall occupancy. The two main channels, we're going to talk a lot about email. So here I'll just take time to talk a little bit about SMS and why you may want to add that in. SMS is great because, well, it has a typically much lower subscribe rate. So it's like usually around 20 to 30% of people who go through the captive portal will subscribe to SMS, while it's 80 or 90% for email. It does have like 85, 90, 95% deliverability and open. So, while the opt-in rate is lower, the percentage of people who see your content and click on it is much, much higher within that audience. That's where I find that kind of last minute discounting availability to be very effective. So some campaigns I've seen that have worked really well is before Thanksgiving, one of our customers had someone cancel. They use SMS to say like, hey, we've had a last minute cancellation, like as in, we can give you a discount if you want to book for Thanksgiving week. They're at a drive-through destination. They know something 2 weeks in advance can drive a booking. It's a little harder if you're in Hawaii or somewhere that takes a little more of advanced planning to get to, right? So knowing who your audience is and can they drive there, can dictate like how last minute you can go with that kind of thing. But it's a way to really strategically give your audience something of high value at like key moments. So you're not just spamming them constantly with SMS that doesn't have a lot of meaning. The other cool stuff you can do with our tool is send a automated text when someone logs into the Wi-Fi where you share stay specific URLs. So for instance, like we talked about that homepage feature where you can include upsells. You can send an email saying like, hey, John, welcome to property. Here's a link to, book tourist activities or a late checkout, and it takes them to that homepage for that property. So you're really building, brand awareness and also providing things of value for the guests during the stay that can also help you generate revenue. And that's pretty much it on SMS. And now I'll just talk a little bit more about email. These are kind of like the 5 most common types of campaigns we see people run through StayFi. So I'll talk a little bit about these. The first is a guest Wi-Fi welcome series. So automating an email or series of emails after Wi-Fi login. This is one that will have the highest open rate and highest click-through rate of all the emails. And I'll show you an example in a second. So essentially you can think of this as 8 guests get to a property. They log into the Wi-Fi over the course of the first day. When they log in, it will trigger them an email from StayFi that can say something like, hey, welcome to XYZ properties. Here's links or here's recommendations. Typically people will include, the contact information for like if they have issues that they prefer you to contact them. And then there's typically some also promotion or early understanding of like, hey, if you want to come back, booking direct will be cheaper through channels, as that's how most people have their pricing set up, is you will see that extra fee that Airbnb or Vrbo charges is being like the main driver in price differences. Some people do mark up third-party channels even more. That company I talked about that did the Thanksgiving text, for instance, she will mark up OTAs even more than just the fee to even drive a bigger price discrepancy, so that when people discover her website, the advantage of booking direct financially is even larger. The second is a newsletter sign up. So if you do add like a pop-up or form to your website, you just really want to make sure that you automate an email to them right after they sign up. Because if that's like another general email thing to know is if you have people sign up for emails, but you never email them, at a certain point, those emails become pretty stale, and the chance of them unsubscribing or marking as spam goes up pretty markedly. So that's one thing to consider is like whenever you start collecting emails, you at least want to set up one type of automation so that they get your email and see you in their inbox so that when you send them another email, they remember who you are. Booking anniversary is a really popular one because we know the dates both from your PMS and from StayFi when somebody booked last or was at the property last. If you know your average kind of book in advance like window, like how is it 3 months, 2 months, 4 months, whatever it is, you should trigger an email like 9 months. Let's say it's 3 months. Trigger an email 9 months post stay or 9 months post booking from PMS data to let the guest know like, hey, you stayed with us last year. Do you want to come again this year? Maybe you can emphasize like we typically book up this time of year, so you can get kind of like that FOMO idea into here as well. And those are really valuable because we know a lot of customers of ours have these guests that typically like travel to this destination once per year. We see that type of whether it's Orlando or the Gulf Coast or Hawaii or skiing or whatever. If you kind of work in that traditional vacation environment, I'm sure you're familiar with this type of guest that comes every year or twice per year or whatever it happens to be. So anniversary triggered emails can be a really great way to drive interest at the right time. Post departure, that's really just building off the Wi-Fi welcome series. So you can think about a guest gets the first email, then you can send an email in like 10 days, 30 days. And that's a great way to get started where maybe you don't want to send a newsletter every month, but you can set up a series of 6 emails to get sent both at Wi-Fi login and post departure. And then there's tons of ways that you can send one-off campaigns, which we'll talk about in terms of kind of like how do you re-engage with guests around, different events or activities happening in your area. I talked a little bit both about automations and one-time campaigns. I always tell people to start with automations because it's hard to commit or predict how much time you're going to have to work on email on a monthly basis, right? Because like I know for most short-term rental operators, time is one of their most precious assets. A lot of things come up last minute. You have fires to put out, you have guests to deal with, employees, contractors, all sorts of things can happen where maybe your intention is to send an email once a month, but doesn't end up happening, right? So spending the time to create, let's say, a 6-month automation for every subscriber is going to take some of the pressure off when it comes to doing this on an ongoing basis, especially since maybe the time and effort it takes to build a newsletter and send it once a month isn't there until the list is, has 500, 1,000 people. So automation's definitely where you want to start. Automations can be very simple. Don't be afraid of just using plain text email. You don't need to design emails highly to be effective. Plain text emails actually work better for smaller operators in many instances for a few reasons. One, you can just write it in your voice. Like if you own 3 properties, you can just write the emails as yourself, and they can appear as if you wrote them spontaneously and not have it be this polished marketing email. The other reality is with Gmail. I'm sure if you have a standard Gmail email, you'll notice that there's like the main inbox and they have this like promotional inbox. When you send emails that are like have a lot of pictures in them, that's how Gmail kind of sorts them into the promotion. So if you send purely plain text emails to engage with your audience, just like, hey, guest name, I'm so and so, I manage the blah 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 property. Just so you know, if you come back and you book at our website, it's cheaper, or you can email me. Just that's a very just like casual relationship building style email. That's typically going to get into the main inbox anyway, so it's going to have a much higher open rate than the emails that get shunted into the promotion inbox. So a lot of people are like a little scared or intimidated by the design side of email marketing, but that's something that like should not hinder you at all because actually many times plain text emails will perform better than the fancy designed ones anyways. Especially if you don't have that capability. We have like design templates in the tool, but plain text works great almost all the time. Then once your list is of a certain size, we typically recommend at least 500 to 1,000 emails. That's where it might make sense to start sending one-off campaigns. That can be something regular, like every month you have like an email with different highlights in it, or you can do that, lay it on top of an automation with very like specific alerts, updates, like we manage a new property. we have this festival next month. Like we're 90% booked for July 4th. So if you want to book, you better book right now, right? So or we had a cancellation, right? So all those types of emails that are one-off, it's good to have like a specific reason behind sending them, and then also making sure your list is of enough size that it's worthwhile for you or someone on your team to do. Here's just some examples of emails within StayFi. This is a newsletter email. So this is one that this company sends, something like this every month. For them, they're like, if you actually look at this email, only the first part is specific for this email, right? So I think this is built off a blog post. So they have like this new blog post they did about their decor and their properties. So that's the only unique content. Everything else below that is they send it in every email. They might change the pictures, but this is interesting too because this audience, because they're a property manager, they funnel everybody into one audience, whether they were a guest or a potential owner. So they're also kind of advertising their whole brand and all services to the whole audience. Also because there can be crossover between guests and homeowners as well, which is always interesting. So you can see here, they're kind of like, they actually lead with property management services as the second item on the left. And then the third one, they have a concierge. That's definitely one of the ways that they like try to differentiate from an OTA, because that's not as easy to message on like an Airbnb or Vrbo. Like you'll get all these items that they can help you book, but through your own website, it can be very clear. And then finally, they have like just a picture of multiple homes to explore all locations. So you can see here, just even having like a monthly newsletter where most of the content is the same and then you kind of vary the headline piece can be an effective strategy to like send one new piece of information and then you have some consistent elements too for every newsletter. Yeah, this company, they only had 14 homes when they started doing this, and they built their own website on Squarespace, and they worked with an agency called Switchback to help them design and do these emails, right? So this is like a more custom design that Switchback helped them with, but of course we also have templates in the tool that you can use as well. This is an example of their automation email. So this is what they get when the guest logs into the Wi-Fi. And you can see here, this is what the builder looks on the right, like in our actual tool. It's drag and drop, very self-explanatory, enters the Wi-Fi welcome segment. So you just define like which contacts, aka contacts from StayFi, qualify, and they get this email. And you can see here, it says like, welcome to the Dakota. So in our email tool, we have merge fields. So you can say things like first name, comma, welcome to property name, right? So you can create one email that works for all homes because it will fill in this relevant information where it needs to. Those can even be links. So like the homepage or even a link to like your Hostfully guidebook, let's say, you can insert those links dynamically as well. So you can say like, here's a link to your guidebook or the StayFi homepage, and that link will change based on the property the guest is in. Here, obviously, they're pushing hardest on their upsells in the first email. So again, emphasizing the concierge. You can imagine if you sent this to all 8 guests in the property, the booker doesn't always communicate what the property manager or what the operator has sent in advance, right? So maybe Juniper was sending the booker like, hey, these are all the cool things we can help you do in the area. And the booker is just lazy or didn't pay attention or whatever. And they didn't tell their friends and family like, hey, do you want to like do a wine tasting or whatever? So here you are able to like get these things now in front of the whole group finally. And then, with some lead time, hopefully you could maybe fulfill some of these upsells to the rest of the audience who's interested. And then finally, they're already dreaming about your next vacation. This allows them to go in and explore these properties. I always think this is great because if this guest loves this style of home and you have some consistency around like price level over your whole portfolio, it's actually kind of a nicer experience than searching on an OTA because now you're kind of getting a standard set of properties that are all trustworthy, as opposed to going back to Airbnb where, maybe the guest's perception is it could be a little more hit or miss, as opposed to having, this trusted operator where you're also getting the price advantage of booking direct. And they don't have to bang them over the head around like, hey, it's cheaper, right? So you can introduce that language a few different ways around kind of like, especially on the website about why book direct is less. And then you can see here on the right, it says wait 5 days. And then they send you another email, like that's a little more emphasizing, come back and stay with us again, less informational about the stay. Because for them, I think their average length of stay is like 3 to 5 days. So they waste like 5 days post login, which typically be like 6 to 7 days. So they're hitting up everybody pretty much either the last day or the day after the guest has left the property. Here's another example of the monthly newsletter. These are just more kind of like design elements you can introduce. So there's like this 4x4 property feature, as well as, that's like another element that you can add to your email just to emphasize other properties that you have within your portfolio. And then we get a lot of questions around like, how do I measure email marketing? How do I know if it's working or not? The first one is, it really depends, like, how are you getting direct bookings today through your website, right? A lot of people we talk to, they're starting with like 0. It's pretty clear. When they send an email newsletter or send an automation, they get a booking through their website. It's pretty obvious to them, at least, that this probably came from StayFi. Things just to monitor within StayFi is like open rates, click-through rates. You'll notice that these are always higher on automated emails because when the email is tied to like a specific event, it's a much more likely to engage the guest than if it's just like a newsletter you send at a random time on a Tuesday. So like log into the Wi-Fi, get the email, we see 60, 70% open rates, which are crazy because a typical newsletter will get like 20, 30%. Same with the click-through rate. So the percentage of people that then go to click, also much higher for those types of automated emails. Google Analytics is the best way as you become more mature in your website to measure the effectiveness of email marketing. The one kind of issue there is you need to have this thing called e-commerce analytics activated in your Google Analytics. And not all the PMS-based websites will support that part of Google Analytics. What's cool when you have that is you can even go to like the campaign and how many bookings were made when I sent from this email versus that email. If you ever do graduate to one of the more sophisticated direct booking websites from like a third-party vendor like Boostly, Realtek ICND, then all that fancy extra analytics are obviously included. Another really good one is if you don't have the analytics piece is promo codes. So almost all the PMS websites we work with now or see can support promo codes. So even if it's, 10% off a booking, if you use this code of your next stay, then obviously you'll know if someone redeems that code and it had something to do with the email. It's also good because that will also help like differentiate, like just because maybe maybe the booking didn't happen last click. So it wasn't like click the email, do the booking. A lot of people will come back to the website another way, and then at least you're tracking it back to the email. And the other thing I like to say is like if you keep seeing guests book you multiple times through an OTA, and you're using StayFi, I would try to figure out from those guests, why didn't they book with you directly, or did they know that they could have booked directly? Maybe something in your website makes it feel untrustworthy. Maybe they, maybe they want some different like insurance options. You just understanding once you have the option why someone may not choose to use it can kind of reveal if anything's missing in your book direct strategy. So that you can like make sure you're meeting the guest where they're at and kind of like what they expect or need to make them feel comfortable doing a direct booking. Because we know there are some guests that feel like there's some comfort in Airbnb or Vrbo. So maybe if you had, a rental contract that spelled out cancellation and all these other issues, just to make sure guests are comfortable, that can really help just kind of reduce any worries from the guest side about, is it trustworthy to send a booking through direct as opposed to maybe they think there are more protections through an OTA. Great. Now it looks like we have 20 minutes or more for questions or a discussion. I'll just mark here that we do have a code for anyone that wants to use it. So you can use BnB Tribe when you sign up for StayFi to get 50% off StayFi for the first 4 months. So that's like the subscription for both the Wi-Fi, data collection, and email marketing. I also mentioned before, email marketing is free up to 200 contacts. So you can create a StayFi account, not used the Wi-Fi piece yet, let's say, download your emails from your PMS and see kind of like what your starting place is, or upload emails from outside of that. So you can even get started, with less than 200 emails for email marketing for free within StayFi as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing all that, Arthur. And I have one question that so when I don't think I see Alina on here in the list, but Alina was she asked a question ahead of time. Are you guys set up to be fully GDPR compliant for people over in Europe?
Yeah, so when it comes to data collection for anyone in Europe, the you have to, we force you, but you have to include a email subscription checkbox, so that everyone has to opt in to email marketing in order to get added to the list. Um, and yeah, so when it comes to like email, it's pretty simple in terms of just like ensuring you're compliant, and that's pretty much true for anywhere in the world. We're going to want to, collect uh, consent from guests prior to marketing, and the same is true for text. Text is even like we don't even let you pre-check the text one. It has to be like an explicit opt-in for text marketing. But yes.
Cool.
And
Okay.
there's no cookies reselling, like all the data we collect you own. There's no like cooking guests and reselling data to other third parties or anything like that. And StayFi doesn't have any rights to use the data for anything else. So any data we collect is owned by the owner operator or the property manager.
Nice. Okay. Awesome. And are there other questions in the Q&A here, or am I good to jump in with some others?
No, you're good to go ahead.
Cool. Um, yeah, I'm actually just personally curious about the SMS side of things. Do you guys have like SMS marketing capability built right into StayFi, or is that done through third party?
It's in StayFi. It's only one-way messaging. So when you set up SMS marketing within StayFi, a few things to know. One is we do all of the text marketing from a toll-free number. So when you sign up, we start the process of registering you for a toll-free number through Twilio, which is like our text provider in the backend that we're built on. There are some new rules and regulations around text marketing, where basically, like, if you don't send text uh, by toll free, if you don't register through some process that either gives you a toll free number or another type of number, your text will no longer be delivered. And that really came to the force in the last year. Um, so the toll free number is like the easiest way to overcome that hurdle. And so we register you for a toll free number. We provide you a unique one for your company. And then you set up an autoresponder within StayFi. So if somebody texts you back, you can send back basically like a programmatic message that tells them your preferred method for communication typically. So we're not trying to be like a new place to talk with guests. That's not the intent. It's only intended for one-way marketing. We kind of have three campaign types within there. One is a welcome text, which I talked about, like triggering an email that gets sent to somebody. Triggering a text when they log in. We have a rate and review feature, which is basically screens for 5-star reviews and lets guests then leave you a review on Google, Facebook, or your own website. So it's really to help you drive the non-booker to leave you reviews other places that are not the OTA, since the OTA is only going to accept reviews from the booker themselves. And the third one is those one-off campaigns, things around like up discounts, cancellations, anything that you want to kind of let everybody know about that subscribe that will get high engagement. So typically I recommend something of value. Nick did raise his hand. So we'd have somebody who raised his hand, and I think I can allow him to talk. So I don't know, Nick, you can ask a question if you'd like.
Cool. Hey there. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right on. I unfortunately got disconnected for a minute there. Perhaps it was answered then, but I'm just wondering if you have any data that implies kind of I guess, a reluctancy to use StayFi or as a guest, that is, to submit your email when getting the Wi-Fi. I mean, obviously, nobody loves necessarily giving away their information for free. And so I would think that there's some hesitancy, but if you can either speak to it anecdotally or if you have data, I'd be interested to know what that sentiment is.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We get that a lot. I'd say that from our standpoint, that issue is almost never brought to us by existing customers. Um, so I don't really ever hear about that. I think one of the main reasons is that like guests do not have to opt in. So while I see 80 to 90% of guests opt in for email marketing across customers, obviously there's, that 10 to 20% that doesn't want their data used for marketing. And so they uncheck that box or they don't check it or however you've customized it for your splash page. So there's definitely we're never forcing the guest to subscribe, let's say that, right? So there's always a way out. I'd also say that, this is fairly common across many types of hospitality environments. So I sometimes think that, like, you went to the airport, you did this, you did it at the hotel, you did it at the Starbucks, right? So it's not something that guests are like unfamiliar with. Also, if you can on your splash page message something of value you're going to provide to guests after they submit their information, that can be very helpful. So anything like we'll send you a code for a discount off your next stay, or like we'll share our top recommendations in the area, or we'll send you our guidebook, or we'll text you, a link to like, our favorite activities or our favorite recommendations. Um, Obviously, just like on the website, when you have like that 10% off code, like anything that's like a give get can increase that subscribe rate. But yes. And then another detail just about StayFi in general is the way it works is we sell you this device called an access point that plugs into the home's existing router and broadcasts a new guest network, which is what the guests connect to get the splash page. The old network can remain running, and we also transmit like an admin network. Um, so if there are a specific guest that's like extremely reluctant to join the captive portal network, which has come up a few times, you can always provide them information for the other network in the property or the admin network, which is password protected and doesn't require a splash page. So it's not like if you do have StayFi and 99.9% of guests are fine going through there. It's not like there isn't an option if that did ever come up with a guest.
Right.
Which I want to
Okay,
highlight as
cool.
well was also a really, really handy part when I was setting StayFi up, is that for all my smart devices that were connected to the internet, I didn't have to like redo all the connections there. So it was super easy to just have my cleaner go in and install the device and like set it up, which is really nice.
That's good to know. Cool. Thanks, guys, for your input.
I think Billy has a question too, so I'll add him to the stage here. Oops, sorry, Billy, I just undid that for you.
Can you hear me
Billy,
now?
if you've yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so what about for guests that maybe you don't want to come back? Like say they broke something or super messy, something like that. Like, are you able to edit your list and make sure that they aren't re-invited and advertised to?
Yeah, of course. So obviously, if you set up an automation that's triggered like right when they get on the Wi-Fi, you may not even know that you don't want to market to them again yet because you haven't gone to the property after they stayed and discovered whatever it is that they did, or maybe you do by then. But yes, at any point you can delete them, unsubscribe them. You can also see all the other people that were there. So maybe it was John and then four other people logged into the Wi-Fi for that same reservation. So you can go ahead and unsubscribe all of them from email, text, or both. And then you can even write little notes in our system. So you can be like, in their guest profile, essentially write like, don't market to, in case, let's say you download StayFi's, maybe like, let's say in 2 years, you decide you don't want to use StayFi anymore and you download all your guest data, you'll have those notes. So you can make sure that you keep track of people you don't want to have come back.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. I don't see any other hands raised, James. So did you have any other of your own questions?
Yeah, I'd love to know, I'd love to get your thoughts on, so one of the things that I've been wanting to take the time to build out lately, and I've kind of got the bones of it put together, is an automation that will take care of the email newsletter, so it doesn't have to be a manual monthly process, where in the automation, it would basically just determine what month it is, drop them into that month, the automation, and send them the appropriate email for that month of the year. And I'm wondering if you've seen someone implement something like that, because obviously, if you're just sending an automated email every month, and it's at random, then you might be marketing summertime activities in the winter. But if you can organize it, like I've got it set up right now, the shell of it to organize and put them into the appropriate month of the year, so that we're kind of tailoring the marketing. And I want to know if you've seen anyone do that, and if so, like how you've seen it work.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is just creating the content in advance and scheduling it.
Mm.
Because, or you'd have to make it so complicated because you would have to make like an automation for every month of the year, depending on like these are our January guest logins, February guest logins, and then like have it all parsed out. Because once they're in the automation, the only way you can move between steps is by days or hours. So it would be complicated to handle that within 12, let's say, automations. As opposed to like if you have a newsletter each month that's going to stay pretty much the same, or you know what it's going to be, you can create all of those in advance and then just schedule them to be sent on those dates to every subscriber, whether they came from StayFi, your own list, your PMS, etc. I think that would be just scheduling them all out would be the best way to handle it for like 12 months.
Hmm. And have you seen any major difference in performance between a typical, especially for like a smaller operator that has like just a few properties? Have you seen a big difference in performance between running a regular monthly newsletter that highlights things to do in the area, like reasons to book the property, versus specific like event promotions and tailoring it more towards something going on or some special thing where you can give a special discount or something like that?
I think the smaller you are, the more success we see with occupancy-based emails, because you don't want to send emails where someone can't book because everything is booked, right? So, you can like, oh, come to Coachella, but like 6 months ago, every listing was booked, or like the eclipse, like maybe all your things were already booked. So why are you marketing this event right in advance? Um, so I think the smaller you are, it's like look at your calendar first, see like, oh, there's a weekend in 6 weeks that's not booked, but all the other ones are. Market that property and that weekend to my list, right? So I think the smaller you are and the more technical you can be. If you're a property manager with 200 properties, then if I send an email about booking for July 4th, I see I still have 30 properties left. So sending them to the website to search is going to be satisfactory enough, as opposed to like if I have very like specific intent behind the email or the text message. Because I think a lot of folks, they have the strategy of like decreasing prices as those like dates come up. And obviously if you can get ahead of booking them directly at kind of your normal or whatever price you would have preferred, we would want you to go that route. So I say the smaller you are, the more tactical and nimble you can be around specific dates and times.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Right on. All right. Yeah. I mean, unless there's any other questions, I just want to say a big thank you to you, Arthur, for your time and going through this with us. It's been really cool to see like exactly how you recommend setting it up and using it. And I've personally really liked working with StayFi. So thanks for putting this together.
Awesome. Well, it was great chatting. And I'll just say, if you go to stayfi.com, we have a demo page, or stayfi.com/demo. And there you can sign up if you'd like for a one-on-one demo with someone on our team, or you can we have a weekly webinar where we do like a full review of the platform. So if you want more information, you can go to stayfi.com/demo and you can schedule time one-on-one, or just attend like a general info session where they'll actually go through the StayFi tool, the setup process, and answer any questions that you have.
Right on. Awesome.
Awesome. Sweet. Thank you, everybody, for joining. It was nice talking to everybody. And thanks for your great questions.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks, James.